My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk. And before we dive in, don't forget, join the Facebook group and also come join our once a month men's chats. They're the third week of the month. Not every month is it the third week, but most months. Love to have you there. But as we dive in today, what would happen? And it has happened for many of you who are listening, that you spent a whole life being something you're not. You realize that at a certain space in life, it's just time to like blow it all up, so to speak, and rebuild. But what if you've already rebuilt and done everything? You're like, I'm just kicking back. I'm in my retirement. I'm just enjoying life. And then you realize one of the biggest steps you're ever going to make is happening. That's what we're talking about today. I had the privilege of meeting today's guest on a wonderful excursion from Zurich to Amsterdam on a boat. And he was driving. No, I'm kidding. He wasn't driving. He wasn't driving the boat, nor was I. He is got some stories to tell us today about coming out later in life. And you notice I put a little emphasis on that, later in life. He lived a lot of different sort of things in his life. And now he's willing and ready to share because he has found the courage to be courageous. His name is Dan Bolen. And that little courage to be courageous thing I just said is his book as well. So we're going to talk about his book and all that good stuff. So Dan, welcome, buddy, to being on the podcast. I remember our conversation on that boat when, what was the gal's name that introduced us? I can't remember. Becky? Was it Becky? What was her name?
It was Becky. It was Becky.
Yes. And she was the one who said, you need to go talk to Rick. And then she was telling me, you need to go talk to Dan. I'm like, I don't even know who you are, girl. So I guess I'll follow the lead here. But so it's just great to finally make this happen. I mean, it's been a couple of months since we did this.
Yeah.
Here we are, the day after Thanksgiving. So folks, you got a little early gift here. You get to like listen about this book, and then you might just buy it and give it to somebody. But let's kind of start, Dan, because there's a whole lot of living you did before you realized it's time for me to be me. So take us wherever you want to start in this whole journey.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Rick. It's a privilege to be able to be on your podcast. I came out as gay late in life at 70.
Okay, everybody's supposed to gasp. Everybody's supposed to gasp right there. Like
70 years old. I knew at 7 years old I was different. I was raised in a generation where gay was not talked about.
Yeah.
It was considered to be criminal. And so it was a generation where I knew I was different at 7. I just liked playing with the boys my age. And I knew that I didn't know anything about sex or gay or anything. I just knew I was different. Then later on, I began to realize that different was that I was gay. And when that hit me, the shame took over. The shame of, oh my God. The shame was from my own shame. My shame from my father, who was very abusive physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so I started doing the hiding thing and started becoming a workaholic. I own an executive search firm, and I was not only running my own search firm, but I was traveling all over the world doing seminars for other companies because we were number one in the United States for what we did. So at my worst, I was working 90 hours a week. And in addition to that, I got connected with Jehovah's Witnesses. Which, as many of you know, is a very controlling religion, not favorable to be gay with Jehovah's Witnesses. And so more shame was put on me by Jehovah's Witnesses. And so how I dealt with my shame was become a workaholic and also addicted to religion.
Hmm.
And then finally, when I sold my company, I had to really deal with who I really, really was. And that's when I began to realize, because I didn't have work to addict on anymore. I'd
Right.
sold my company, been very successful. We were doing very well. Um, but I had to deal with who I was. And what really got me started, Rick, is I had to deal with the shame of who I was. I hated who I was as a gay person. And shame eats the core of who you are. You can be guilty
Absolutely.
before you did something, but shame eats the core of who you are.
Hmm.
And I had to deal with that horrible shame that I had on myself. And so, whenever I had the shame before, I just work harder, go give more talks at the conventions of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was an elder in the church. Um, so I just buried it and buried it and buried it because they didn't have to think about it. And that's what
Right.
happened when people are dealing with shame.
Right.
Usually they'll addict on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they don't deal with the shame, the fear will cause them to addict on something, whether it be drugs, alcohol, sex,
Hmm.
workaholism, religious addiction. They're going to addict on something. So I had to deal with
Absolutely.
that shame. And that shame, and you'll see how I talk a lot about that in the book.
Yep.
I won't give the some really incredible things happen in the book. Some of them not does not reflect well on my environment that I was raised in.
Hmm.
Um, you're going to see in the book an attempted suicide on my part because of the shame was so huge in my life. So
Right.
when I did come out as gay and had one experience, I had to told my wife at the same time exactly what happened. A judicial committee was formed. I went into severe depression, did not want to meet with them. They insisted, and I was disfellowshipped from the church. And the shame is what
Yep.
I ended up trying to commit suicide. You'll see there was an accident involved in which I was rushed to the hospital. But I finally had to deal with the shame of who I was. And finally, through my own therapy and having a therapist, I began to realize I'm a beautiful gay man. And this is the
Hmm.
way I was created by my creator. Um, and nobody defines who I am.
No.
My ex wife does not define who I am. My partner, John, does not define who I am. Religion doesn't define who I am. Jehovah's Witnesses don't. I define who I
Right.
am, and I
Yeah.
define myself as a beautiful gay man. And Rick, that was a breakthrough for me.
Yep.
When I began to realize I love and define myself as a beautiful gay man, I was able to make the transition to um, a total peace and total acceptance of who I am.
Hmm.
And that's how it got involved in writing the book because I got disfellowship from the church. Um, all my family are Jehovah's Witnesses, except my daughter, who totally supports her dad for being gay, 100%.
Mm.
But I got disfellowship, which that means the shunning starts and nobody can
Yes.
talk to you or have nothing to do with you again. So none
Hmm.
of my family will hasn't anything to do with me in over 8 years.
Wow.
Um, so I still write this book because my therapist says, you have this incredible story, Dan. You've got to write a memoir about this. And I said, well, I'm not a writer. He put me in contact with a professional writer. I wrote it and it came out in August of 2022, gets 5-star
Mm.
ratings on Amazon. And I encourage your listeners to really go and read the ratings. The ratings are powerful
Mm.
about people who have found this book, The Courage to Be Courageous. Here's a
Yep.
copy of it right here. This
Yep.
is what it looks like. And I would really encourage all of you to go to read the reviews because what's interesting on the reviews, Rick, is half of them are from heterosexual allies who have
Hmm.
said, I've had fear in my life. And when I read your story, it gave me the courage to deal with my fear and to be able to become out and be my authentic self. We had one particular reader who has been with her husband for 25 years, miserable. He was self-controlling. She lived in fear, and she read my book, and she said it was so powerful for her. She did what she wanted to do. She was always trying to please everybody.
Yep.
She finally ended up divorcing her husband, And she said it was the greatest gift that I gave her was my book and my
But I
memoir
think
that I
that's the
wrote.
thing, Dan, that so many people don't realize. First, people, okay, so everybody listening, Dan has given us so much beautiful stuff here, but a couple of things that really rose to the top here.
Okay.
People don't realize sometimes the difference between guilt and shame. So you really need to get
Absolutely.
that very much straightened out in your own head. Guilt is you did something wrong and you actually did something wrong. So you actually like broke the law. You're guilty of that. Okay.
Mhm.
Shame is I'm ashamed because I feel like I've done something wrong that somebody else expects me to do. And that's where shame starts to layer and layer and layer and layer. And we get caught in that little lovely hamster wheel of shame because we're trying to please everybody else. I'm ashamed because I'm not meeting what the Jehovah's Witnesses taught me to be. I'm ashamed because I'm overweight. I'm ashamed because I want to suck dick. And, it's all these
Yeah.
things. There's nothing, quote, guilty, cross our fingers, they don't start going back to those days, about wanting to be with another man in bed, right? But there's no shame in that. But the shame comes from, wait, my church told me this is a sin. I better not do it. When reality, that's not actually true. And so, first of all, everyone needs to like really go spend some good time understanding the difference between those two things. It will start to help move your wheels. And what's so interesting about what you've been sharing, Dan, is suddenly it catapults forward. And here we are, gay men, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Some of us have come out earlier. Some of us have been out since we were 20s. I came out at 36. And I can't tell you how many years, and every once in a while it still hits Dan, that I go through the guilt and shame, not because I'm gay, but because those seeds of shame show up in all parts of life.
They'll show up at times. And I think what's important that we all will have those because we were raised in a shameful situation. And
Yep.
so sometimes they'll crop up. What helps me, and I define similar to you, but guilt. I can be guilty because I did something and I can apologize for guilt.
Absolutely.
You can't apologize for shame because
Nope.
shame eats who you are. And so shame to me, and we get shame. The LGBTQ community gets shame from our environment. We get shame from our community, from our own community can
Yep.
actually put some shame on us.
Yep.
But we get shame from all different areas.
Yep.
Um, and that's when I realize and shame is just a horrible thing to think of. And I think we have to bring ourselves out of the shame, even though we have at times a feeling of shame.
Mm-hmm.
We have to recognize it, and we have to say, "Wait a minute,
Yep.
this is I hear it's coming, but let me tell you, it's not my shame. It's my thinking that's getting me where I'm at."
Well, it is.
And
It's
I
the thinking around the shame that actually
absolutely.
it causes us to spiral back into it. And because if you really think about the human experience is let's make you feel shame about this, or let's make
Mhm.
you feel shame about that or that. I mean, we can't help it. And I love that you brought up that even within our own community, because for a community who is so, please let me just be who I am and do what I like and love who I love and all this sort of stuff, we sure can throw shame shade like nobody else,
Mhm.
like nobody else,
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things I so appreciated about the trip that we met, that, okay, sure, there's going to be probably some shame that gets thrown, but for the most part, we were a small little community just appreciating each other for who we were. Plain and
Absolutely. I
simple,
totally
right?
agree. I
Yeah.
totally
Yes.
agree.
Was I attracted to everybody on the boat? That's a whole different conversation. But there
Mhm.
wasn't anything that anybody did that I'd go, wow,
Mhm.
really, I'm going to throw shade. And I think that's something that we as a community can do better. I know the planet can do it better, but sometimes it has to start within our own LGBTQ space where we've got to quit throwing so much shade of shame at people, because otherwise there are still people reeling from that. And every day there's going to be somebody coming into their own world of being a gay man where they're carrying shame like it's like the whole world, right?
Mhm.
And too often that shame is the thing that is the hardest piece to break as a gay man. Plain and
And
simple.
I want to think something else, Rick. You made me think of this too. some of our you hear people that are uh, either bi or gay,
Hmm.
uh, or even trans,
Yep.
and sometimes they will that they will become homophobic. They'll say homophobic things when they're
Hmm.
gay, and that is the result of shame.
Yep.
Because why are people homophobic? It's because they're dealing with the shame wherever
Hmm.
that shame came from. That's where it
Right.
came from. And I think that's one of the things where, we've got to work. Um, I think once we become comfortable and accept who we are without shame, then we can pass that non-shame onto
Hmm.
someone else. But if we're struggling with our own issues of shame,
Yep.
we're going to pass that shame on to somebody else. That's my
Absolutely.
take on it. And it's
Yep.
going to come out in some other way, and usually some unhealthy way. I belong to an organization called Gamma, which are gay men married to
Yep.
women. And I see so many homophobic comments by bisexual men that they hate and they're ashamed of who they are. And I said, until you work that through, you're going to pass that on to others.
Hmm.
And you can even pass that on to even to your own family. And so I think
Absolutely.
that's a huge point. And
It is a
I,
huge
I really,
piece.
and I know because I was buried in it for so
Yep.
long.
Me too.
I was
Me too.
buried in it so long, and that's one of the things that I really thought was, inspiring. I wanted to make a comment about the book, The Courage to Be Courageous, and I want to encourage people to read the reviews because um, they're outstanding. All the proceeds of that book go to support all three LGBTQ organizations: the SAGE
Mm.
Projects, that's fighting for senior rights for gay men and women; Outright International, that's fighting for um, uh, gay rights throughout the entire world. 11 countries still put them to death for being
Yep.
gay. Some of them are some really incredible, credible, horrible stories of what's going on there. And Outright International is fighting that. And then the Trevor Project, as many of you
Mm.
know, is an international organization. I interview all three of them on my podcast. But all the proceeds of my book go to support those three organizations 100% too.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and I want to encourage you too, for people who to listen to my podcast,
Yep.
and is www.danbolen, DANBOLEN.com. You'll see we're all over the social media network. We're on Spotify, YouTube, let's TikTok,
Yep.
also Instagram, Facebook. We're all over there as well. So
So I'm
there's some
curious,
incredible
Dan,
stories.
would you have
Yes.
ever seen yourself doing these things? Like being a podcaster, writing a book, any of this sort of stuff?
Yeah, that is such a powerful question. The answer is never. I never
Yep.
thought that. But let me tell you how this evolved, because when I was told to write a book of my memoir, I was only going to write it and give it to my family because
Hmm.
they don't know who the real Danny is. They call me Danny. And so I wasn't going to release it. And then my podcaster said, or excuse me, my co-writer and my therapist said, you got to go public. It'll save lives. So that's when I went public with it. And then what happened after that, I said, I was voiceless for so many decades. I have a voice now. And so
Yeah.
2.5 years ago, I started doing podcasts. And it's been such an incredible gift for me to have a
Yep.
voice for our community when I was voiceless for 70 years.
Yeah. I
So
never,
it's
I would have
been,
never saw myself doing this ever.
yes, and it's the gift I give our community,
Hmm.
is to be able to. And what's interesting, Rick, is I've had several people who have contacted me who have been on the verge of suicide,
Hmm.
and they said my podcast has saved their lives,
Yeah.
and my book has made a difference in their lives. So it's a gift that I give our community. And so, no, I never thought I would do it,
No.
and now I'm doing it, and I love having a voice for our
Yeah.
community right
I
now.
remember back in, so it would have been, and a lot of the guys have already heard this, but this conversation today has reminded me. It was probably 2013, Yeah, I think 2013 is when I started playing around with this concept of possibly going to do something with a book or, something like that. And then a girlfriend of mine who had a podcast, well, it wasn't a podcast, it was an internet radio show. And she said, I don't want to do this anymore. You should be doing this. I'm like, no. And she goes, no, you should be doing this. She goes, first of all, you're an amazing coach. Number two, you've got the voice. I'm like, no, I don't. And she's like, you do. She goes, a lot of people who hear you speak, they're like, he has the voice of like a radio guy. I'm like, okay, I guess.
Yes.
And I just started going, okay. And that wasn't why I did it. And so finally she kind of talked me into it. She's actually responsible for talking me into a couple of things. And I got behind the microphone the first time and I was like, okay. And I had my little script and I was really like, totally following the script. And, my husband and kids said, you did really, really good. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Did the next show. Yeah, you did good, Dad. By the third show, they're like, you're good. And that was when I realized there was a but. They're like, but you need to let people hear the real you. The script is good and you're following it. And now, so first podcast is done. We finished that one last year, 651 episodes, 10 years. And I'm just like, I was already doing this one too. I'm like, I can't do two podcasts. I mean, I could.
Yeah.
I love doing podcasts. I would love to do a third podcast, but not while I'm working full time still. It's like, there's just way too many things going on.
Yeah.
And I tell my husband all the time, you take everything else away. You could take everything else away, but do not take away my podcasts. I love the conversations. I love the outreach. I love the impact I get to have it. And I'm not saying that, listeners, from this ego, like I want to have this. I realize there are people who need to hear the voices in different ways, in different tones, in different stages of life. Dan and I aren't that far apart in distance in age, but there is a perspective of somebody who came out at 70 versus somebody who came out at 36. There's a difference. Were you married before? I can't remember, Dan.
I've been married twice. The first time,
I thought. For some reason,
26 years.
Yeah.
26 years the first time, and then never allowed to remarry again. So I stayed single 18 years because of church rules. Right. And then I married the second time when I came out and married 7 years.
Okay. So you got the experience of the marriage stuff too.
Yes,
so see, there's these interesting things that we bring to the table. It hit me the other day that, I'm 60. I just turned 62. Actually, I turned 62 when we were on the cruise. The day that we got off the boat was my birthday.
Oh, is that right?
yeah. That was my birthday that day. And on the flight home, I was like, 62. Okay, wow. Next year, I'll be married 25 years to George. I was married for the first time for 13 years. I've been married a majority of my life. And it was such an interesting thing. And then I thought, I need to talk about that on the podcast. I need to talk about like, here's a perspective of like, what is it like to be somebody who's been married for a majority of your life? And one part of it was, quote, heterosexual, and the rest of it's been gay. And the things you learn about being in relationships and how your relationships shift and stuff. Those are the moments that I just feel, Dan, are so valuable for us to continue to share, because you and John have been together 7 years at this point. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of like newlyweds. Let's just go. Mm-hmm. You're kind of like little newlyweds, right? But you're bringing years of experience of having been there. It's just now wrapped in a different wrapper as being your truest self, as your gay self in a marriage to a guy. And so I think these are the beautiful things that we often don't realize. There can be, and there's plenty of other gay podcasters out there, let's be real. What I love about it is the diversity we get to bring to meet the people who need to hear it the most in their own way. There's going to be people who aren't going to relate to either one of us, and that's totally cool.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who are going to read your book and love it, and there's going to be people who read my book and hate it, and vice versa. There's going to be people who read like, that didn't really land with me. In fact, one of the books that's so interesting to me, Dan, that I use in my coaching practice a lot is I make it mandatory reading for anybody who's coming out of the closet working with me to read The Velvet Rage.
It's a great book.
Okay, so you see, you say great book, I say great book, but I have a lot of people like...
The first book I read was Velvet Rage.
Okay, so and there's a whole story behind Alan Downs, which we won't get into here. I'll tell you that when we get done recording. But it's a really interesting thing to see how many people go, oh yeah, that's so relatable to me. And then other guys who've read it, so we both came out later in life. I've had guys in my coaching practice late in life are like, yeah, I can't really relate to that. That's just not the kind of gay I see myself as. I'm like, and that's okay, because guess what? By you reading and seeing it, now I can ask you, then who do you see yourself as? What is that gay man you relate to? All of those things. And that's why I think it's so beautiful when we get to have these kind of conversations and different books that come out there that can really reach people. So I got a question for you about the book. As you were writing it, I can only imagine that there was some big ahas and transformations for you personally in your own world. Is that true?
I think so. And I read it, I wrote it originally for cathartic reasons because I had lost
Absolutely.
my whole family. But the more I got into it, I began to realize, and it brought up a lot of pain.
Of course.
It brought up a lot of some joy because I think you'll see in the book, I'm extremely funny. At least in my own mind, I think I am. But it is funny. But it also was. It took us a year and a half to write with Landon
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon, my writer, and there were moments where we were both crying, and both when we were both laughing, and it brought all types of emotions. Um, Knowing that I had lost my family, I was one
Yep.
of seven children. I was kind of the patriarch of the family. So yeah, it brought up all these emotions. And that's when I decided at the end that, hey, let's go public with this, because if it will save a life, which it has,
Mm-hmm.
then it was well worth it. Yeah, it brought up
Well,
all
not
different
only
types of
save a life,
emotion.
Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt here, but here's something I found so interesting in my own journey with my book. Not only does it save a life, but it can very quietly, in the quiet, in the dark of somebody's phone, if they're reading on their Kindle, it can give them hope, because that may be the only way they can experience hope, because they're not quite ready to be out and take that courage to be courageous walk like you and I have done.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, my frankly, my dear, I'm gay. They may only be able to say that in their own head as they're reading my book, but they're reading it on their phone or their iPad or something like that in the quiet of their own way. And it's giving them that ability to go, oh, wow, this guy felt the same things. Oh, this guy experienced this, in your case, all the way till he was 70. I can't imagine doing that till I'm 70. It might be the inspiration that gets them to take the move. But the beauty of all these mediums, even this podcast and your podcast, is sometimes we will never hear. We will never hear from most of the people that ever listen to us, read our books, or anything. We
Yeah.
just won't. That's the way it is. I mean,
Hmm.
I get average. I think I average around 30,000 downloads a month on this podcast.
Hmm.
That's a lot of people. Dan, I don't want to get that much love mail. I can't handle that much email. I'm sorry. I don't want that. I love you all very much. Okay. I'm not saying don't reach out to me, but I can't handle 30,000 emails. Okay. But what I love is these mediums, think back to the times which you probably can relate to. Back in your early younger days, you couldn't even talk about being gay. It was not even talked about. It was so hidden under the covers, and you had to go hide and knock on secret doors in cities and go to these little tiny clubs and all this stuff. To have this medium now readily available, and the beauty of like what you're doing, given the book sell revenues, the profits from that to these organizations, none of that would have been possible when you were a young teen. Just wouldn't have
That
been
is correct.
happening.
Right.
And so I think these are
And
those
and I think
beautiful things.
and I think you mentioned a comment giving them hope. Because when you're in this situation and you don't have any media connections, you think you're the only one going through
The
it.
only one.
And by getting connected to this, it's like, oh my God, you know, he came out gay at 70. Why? And I get the question, why did you wait so long? And I think I can just, and it's the question, and I always answer it this way, saying, because I had to deal with the shame of who I was. And until I was able to deal with the shame, then I could not come out. I think my shame and my denial of who I was so great. I think I could have passed the lie detector test because I denied myself There's no way, and this is all my shame talking.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
no way I could be gay. There was no
No.
freaking way I can be gay.
Mm.
Um, and I convinced myself that I was obviously that I was not gay.
Yep.
So again, the greatest lies we tell is the lies we tell
Tell
ourselves
ourselves.
because
Absolutely.
we lie, and I think that is
But
so true as
also,
well.
the greatest truths are the greatest truths we allow ourselves to be. So,
Oh, great comment. And I think one of the things that for me, and I'm in the latter part of my years of life, I have more peace and more acceptance and more empathy and understanding than I've had in my whole life. And I think that's
mm,
because I gave that to myself first. And
yes.
once you have that gift yourself, people are going to be drawn to you as you pass that gift on to them as well. And it doesn't mean, I mean, because I was raised in a very hostile environment with my dad being a rageaholic. Um, I was taught anger at a young
Of
age, so I
course.
can get angry really, really quick. But I don't do it near as much as I used to because I
Well, because you've given you the
I,
gift. You just said it. You've given yourself the
I give me
gift
the
of
gift,
peace, understanding, and
and
empathy.
yeah,
And I think
and
that's part of the healing process in my mind of learning
mhm,
to overcome shame. Because you can't experience shame and peace at the same time. You can't
no,
experience shame and understanding. You can't experience shame and empathy simultaneously. You can have shame, spark those things, but it's so interesting when we really think about the emotions that we experience. We can't be happy and sad at the same time. We're either happy or we're sad. However, sadness can lead us to happiness, and happiness can lead us to sadness in different ways.
right.
But I think these are those beautiful. I love that you brought that three pieces together because that truly is the gift. So there's another gift, folks. It's holiday season. It's the day after Thanksgiving. Start thinking gifts. Not only gifts you can give yourself, but gifts you can give, like Dan's book. So I got one last question for
Hmm.
you, Dan. Now that you have
Okay.
stepped into this beautiful space,
Hmm.
you do it every day, right? You do it every day.
I do. I wake up. I wake up with, I think the biggest quality I wake up with joy and I wake up with peace. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have my days that I'm not
Of
doing
course you
as
do.
good
That's
as
why I
I'd
was
like
kind
to,
of
but
poking the bear like
but
it's a
I
joke,
always
but
yeah, I wake up every day just knowing I'm not hiding anything from myself and I'm not hiding anything from others. And I've been able to pass on, I think, a beautiful gift of people of, and again, it gets back, and I know I said this before, when you have peace and joy and acceptance, you're going to pass those things on to other.
Mhm.
When you don't have peace and you don't have joy and you don't have accepting you as your authentic self, you're going to pass that on to others. So
Exactly.
the only way to get, I can't, don't get caught in the squat, I call it. You got to get
I
out
love
of the
that.
squat. Okay, don't get caught in the squat. And the squat is being able to analyze who you really are, understand who you are, accept who you are authentically, and then you will have a gift that you'll be able to pass on to others.
That's so beautiful. That's probably the perfect way to wrap this whole thing up. Because and well, that or don't get caught in the squat. I've never heard that phrase. I love that one. Well, I guess some of us want to get caught in a squat because that's enjoyable. But hey, but I think that peace, empathy, acceptance sort of stuff, like yes, we're gonna wake up, we're human, and some days we're just not gonna feel it. But what I've learned, which it sounds like you've learned, I can wake up like this morning. I'm going to be honest, guys. I woke up with a headache. I didn't sleep well. I'm like, oh gosh, I got to travel tomorrow, and I've got a busy day. I started at 6:30 this morning with coaching sessions and work and all this sort of stuff, and then this crazy old 70-year-old guy who came out of the closet wants to do a podcast with me today. I got lots of shit going on in my life. And then I took a
we
breath.
don't say 70-year-old. We say 70-year older.
Older or 70
Older.
years young or
Older. You say older. We don't say
older.
old. Old
Yeah.
means you're kind of gone.
But
70
the thing
years
that's
older.
But the thing that switched my thinking was, okay, Rick, but you get to have all this. All of this is what brings you joy. all of this is what brings you peace of mind, to have a roof over your head. And suddenly I was like, okay, the headache's still here. It's still hanging on. I know. I didn't even drink last night, John. I didn't have one drink at all. I'm like, why is it I'm waking up this morning? Maybe I should have had a drink. So tonight I might drink, but I'm like, no, I got to go travel and fly tomorrow. I don't want to be driving and trying to get to an airport and go,
and I want
the worst headache.
Rick, I want to tailgate on one of the things that you just said there. And this is the reason I do podcasts, of course, is because it's the gift I give to our community and it's a voice. But I think I get more out of it than they get out of it. But I interview these incredible people. They give me a lift. I just and I think when I do, of course, I'm a people person because I was an executive recruiter. But I get more out of it, I think, than they do.
I agree.
So I give a gift, but I get a bigger gift back for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going to hope that everybody goes and finds your book on Amazon, all the outlets where it is. Again, folks, for those of you watching us on YouTube, The Courage to Be Courageous. You can't miss it. It's out there. I double checked. I went and started checking around. Like, I know his book is everywhere. His website is danbolen.com. So you can go there and it'll guide you to all those places, but go give the gift.
Thank you.
But the gift that you should be given the most is the gift to yourself of telling shame to go kick it to the curb. Just sashay away.
So, I totally agree with that.
Well, Dan, so good to reconnect with you, buddy. I'm glad we had this opportunity. Thank you for being here. And guys, thank you for listening and being part of this. I hope as the holiday season kicks off that you give yourself peace as you go through it. It's always one of those times a year, but go have peace, be yourself, and continue to unapologetically dump your excuses and face your fears and be the 40+ gay man that you're supposed to be out there in the world.
And Rick, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's been my pleasure. My pleasure.
Great.
Take care.
That's a wrap for 40+. Gay men, gay talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40+, Gay Men, Gay Talk, where the conversations continue.